What if I told you that in the history of humanity, there are coincidences so unbelievable that scientists still rack their brains trying to explain them? You know that strange things sometimes happen in life. You meet an old friend in another country, think about someone, and they suddenly call. But there are coincidences that go far beyond ordinary chance. Today I will tell you about 33 historical coincidences that sound as if someone deliberately planned them. Some involve famous people, others ordinary individuals, but they are all united by one thing. They cannot be explained by logic. Mathematicians speak of probability theory. Skeptics speak of selective perception. But when you hear these stories, you will ask yourself whether something greater exists. And the most astonishing one I saved for the end. Hold on tight. Let's begin. Fact 1. Lincoln and Kennedy. A coincidence across 100 years. Abraham Lincoln and John Kennedy, two of the most famous presidents of the United States, were both assassinated while in office, and both are remembered as fighters for human rights. At first glance, they seem like just two tragedies in American history, but when you dig deeper, it becomes chilling. The list of coincidences between them is so long that when it was first published in 1964, 1 year after Kennedy's assassination, it made even skeptics pause. Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846. Kennedy was elected exactly 100 years later in 1946. Lincoln became president in 1860, Kennedy in 1960. Both were assassinated on a Friday in the presence of their wives. Both were killed by a shot to the back of the head. Lincoln was assassinated in Ford's Theater, and Kennedy was killed in a Lincoln car manufactured by the Ford Company. But that is not all. Lincoln's secretary was named John, and Kennedy's secretary was named Lincoln. Both presidents were born as the second children in their families and were named after their grandfathers. Both suffered from hereditary diseases. Lincoln had Marfan syndrome. Kennedy suffered from spinal muscular atrophy. Lincoln was succeeded by Andrew Johnson, born in 1808. Kennedy was succeeded by Lyndon Johnson, born in 1908. And the most disturbing detail, Lincoln's assassin was named John Wilkes Booth, born in 1839. Kennedy's assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, was born in 1939. Both assassins were shot before trial. How is that even possible? Fact 2. The King and his restaurant double. The year 1900. The Italian city of Monza. King Umberto I of Italy decided to dine at a small restaurant. When the owner came out to greet the royal guests, the king froze in astonishment. Standing before him was his exact double, and the resemblance was not only physical. The king's name was Umberto of Savoy, and the restaurant owner's name was Umberto Santini. Both were born in Turin on the 14th of March, 1844, in the same city on the same day. Both married on the 22nd of April, 1868, women named Margherita. On the 8th of January, 1878, one Umberto ascended the throne, and on that same day the other opened his restaurant. Both had sons named Vittorio. The king was so stunned that he ordered his adjutant, Poncevaglia, "I want to award this man. Make sure that tomorrow he is definitely present at the sporting event." However, on the morning of the 29th of July, 1900, the king was informed that his double had been killed by an unknown robber at dawn. According to legend, Umberto said, "Not everything in our destinies matched after all, and he did not finish the sentence. An anarchist named Gaetano Bresci leapt from the crowd and fired 3 shots at the king. Umberto I died on the spot. 2 Umbertos who lived parallel lives died on the same day, only hours apart. Fact 3. The novel that predicted the sinking of the Titanic. The year 1898. 14 years before the Titanic tragedy, American writer Morgan Robertson published the novel Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. Just fiction? Not at all. The coincidences between the fictional ship Titan and the real Titanic border on mysticism. The ship in the novel was called Titan. The real one was Titanic. The Titan was 243 meters long, the Titanic 269 meters. The Titan could reach a speed of 25 knots, the Titanic 24 knots. The Titan had 3 propellers, and the Titanic also had 3. Both ships were called unsinkable. There were 3,000 people aboard the Titan, and 2,224 aboard the Titanic. Both ships catastrophically lacked enough lifeboats. Most importantly, both ships sank in April in the Atlantic Ocean after colliding with an iceberg on the starboard side. Robertson wrote that the Titan surpassed all ships in mass and that the only object capable of sinking it was an iceberg. That is exactly what happened on the 14th of April, 1912. Robertson himself claimed that the plot came to him in a dream. He saw a huge ship and heard the heart-wrenching screams of drowning people. The writer died in 1915, never fully recovering from the shock that his nightmare had become reality. Fact 4. Edgar Allan Poe predicted cannibalism at sea. The year 1838. 46 years before a real event, Edgar Allan Poe published The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. The novel describes a shipwreck after which 4 survivors find themselves adrift at sea in a lifeboat. Driven to desperation by hunger, 3 of them kill and eat the 4th. The victim's name is Richard Parker. In reality, in 1884, an almost identical tragedy occurred. The British yacht Mignonette sank. 4 crew members ended up in a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean. After 19 days without food or water, 3 made the horrific decision to kill and eat the cabin boy. His name was Richard Parker, exactly as in the novel written almost half a century earlier. When the survivors were rescued and tried in England, the case became a sensation. The defense pointed to Poe's novel as evidence that the writer had somehow foreseen the future. But how could he have known not only the circumstances, but even the name of the victim? Fact 5. Mark Twain and Halley's Comet. The year 1835, the 30th of November. Halley's Comet passes by, a bright celestial body that appears once every 76 years. 2 weeks after the comet's perihelion, in the small town of Florida, Missouri, a boy named Samuel Clemens is born, the future writer Mark Twain. This story would not seem remarkable if not for Twain's own words. In 1909, when the writer was already 74 years old, he said a sentence that sends chills down the spine. "I came in 1835 with Halley's Comet. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it." His loved ones thought it was just a joke in the spirit of the famous satirist. But on the 20th of April, 1910, the comet again approached Earth at its minimum distance. The next day, on the 21st of April, 1910, Mark Twain died of a heart attack exactly as he had predicted. He came with the comet and left with it. 2 visits of the celestial body, 76 years apart, perfectly matched the beginning and the end of the life of the greatest American writer. Fact 6. The Jim twins, separated yet identical. The year 1940, the state of Ohio, United States. Twin brothers are born. Their 15-year-old mother cannot raise them and gives them up for adoption. The children are separated at the age of 3 weeks and placed with different families living 60 kilometers apart. What happened next shatters all notions of coincidence. Both adoptive families, without knowing each other and without consulting anyone, named the boys the same name, Jim. Jim Lewis and Jim Springer grew up unaware of each other's existence. In 1979, when they were 39 years old, Jim Lewis found his brother's contact information, and they met for the first time. What emerged was unbelievable. Both had married women named Linda in their youth. Both divorced their Lindas and remarried women named Betty. Each named his son James Allen, with the only difference being that one spelled it Allen and the other Allen. Both had stepbrothers named Larry in their adoptive families. Both worked in security-related professions. One was a security guard, the other a deputy sheriff. Fact 7. Both suffered from migraines. Both were heavy smokers. Both hated spelling but loved mathematics. Both were passionate about carpentry and technical drawing. Both had a dog named Toy. When scientists from the University of Minnesota studied their cases, they were astonished. Twins raised apart turned out to be more similar to each other than brothers raised together. Fact 8. Genetics or mysticism. 3 strangers on a train. The year was 1920. England. 3 men boarded the same train carriage without knowing each other at all. During the long journey, they began talking and decided to introduce themselves. What emerged shocked all 3. The first was named Bingham, the second Powell, and the third Bingham Powell. The double surname of the third passenger exactly matched the surnames of the other two travelers. None of them were related. They were complete strangers. Simply three random Englishmen ended up in the same carriage, and their surnames formed a perfect combination. Mathematicians calculated the probability of such a coincidence. Considering how common these surnames were in England at the time and the number of railway passengers, the chance was roughly 1 in several million. Yet it happened. Imagine the looks on their faces at that moment. If you think this is surprising, hold on. The next stories are even more incredible. Fact 9. The Moffat twins and a heart attack. The 22nd of May, 1975, United Kingdom. Twin brothers John and Arthur Moffat lived separately, dozens of miles apart. Each had his own family and his own life. They had not seen each other for several weeks. That evening, on the 22nd of May, both brothers simultaneously felt severe chest pain. Both were urgently hospitalized in different hospitals in the cities where they lived. Doctors gave the same diagnosis: acute myocardial infarction. Both brothers died within 1 hour, almost at the same time. Relatives learned about the tragedy only when they began calling each other. The shock was overwhelming. Twins living dozens of miles apart suffered heart attacks in the same minute and died almost synchronously. Doctors found no explanation. The brothers had no hereditary heart disease. Their lifestyles were different, their diets as well. This is called the twin connection. But how can it work over such a distance? Fact 10. Hitler and Roosevelt, enemy doubles. The 1930s. Two men came to power in their countries with a difference of just 1 day. Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany on the 30th of January. Franklin Roosevelt took office as President of the United States on the 4th of March. They would become sworn enemies in the Second World War. Despite external differences and opposing ideologies, their biographies are strikingly similar. Both were born in the 1880s, only a few years apart. Both were interested in art in their youth. Hitler wanted to become a painter. Roosevelt was fascinated by architecture. Both suffered severe trauma that changed their lives. Hitler was wounded and gassed in the First World War. Roosevelt contracted poliomyelitis and was left disabled. Both came to power during the deepest economic crises in their countries. Both were charismatic speakers who knew how to ignite crowds. Both launched large-scale programs to rebuild their economies. Hitler with autobahns and rearmament. Roosevelt with the New Deal. Most chilling of all, both died in April 1945, 18 days apart. Roosevelt on the 12th of April, Hitler on the 30th of April. Two leaders who shaped world history lived their lives in parallel and left almost simultaneously. Historians call this the synchrony of destinies. Fact 11. Violet Jessop, the woman who survived 3 shipwrecks, the year 1919, the ship Olympic, flagship of the White Star Line. On board worked a young stewardess named Violet Jessop. In September 1911, Olympic collided with the military cruiser Hawke. The ship was seriously damaged but did not sink. Violet survived by a miracle. In reality, this was only the beginning of her incredible story. In April 1912, Violet took a job as a stewardess on the new liner of the same company, Titanic. On the 14th of April, the ship struck an iceberg. Violet boarded a lifeboat and survived, becoming one of 706 survivors. She was called lucky, but her adventures did not end there. In 1916, during the First World War, Violet worked as a nurse on the hospital ship Britannic, the third vessel of the same class as Olympic and Titanic. On the 21st of November, 1916, Britannic struck a mine and sank. Violet found herself in the water again. She was nearly pulled under the ship's propellers but survived. 3 of the largest shipwrecks of the 20th century, 3 sister ships, the same woman on board, and she survived all 3. Violet lived to the age of 83 and died in 1971 of natural causes. She was nicknamed Miss Unsinkable. Fact 12. James Dean and the Fatal Advertisement, the year 1955, Hollywood. 24-year-old actor James Dean was at the peak of fame after starring in Rebel Without a Cause and East of Eden. He loved speed and racing sports cars. Shortly before the tragedy, Dean appeared in a public service advertisement about road safety. In that commercial, he spoke words that would prove prophetic. Remember, the life you save may be your own. It was his last recording. On the 30th of September 1955, just a few weeks after filming the advertisement, James Dean died in a crash in his Porsche 550 Spider. His car collided with a Plymouth on a California highway. Dean was only 24 years old. The road safety film was released after his death, turning from a public message into a chilling reminder of the fragility of life. Millions of viewers saw Dean warning them about the very danger that would kill him days later. Coincidence or a premonition of his own death? Fact 13. Born into different families, meeting on the same street, a modern story. A young woman moved from a small town to a regional center, rented an apartment on the outskirts, started a new job, and met her colleagues. One colleague lived in the same neighborhood, and they often traveled home together. One day they decided to stop by her apartment for tea. The man stepped inside and froze at the doorway. He had already been there. It turned out his aunt had lived in that apartment before. They discussed the details and discovered something even stranger. His aunt had moved out just a week before the woman moved in. But that was not all. The woman said that as a child, she often visited this city to see her grandmother, who lived on the neighboring street. The man took out a photo album. It turned out his aunt and the woman's grandmother had been neighbors and knew each other well. They had seen each other as children without knowing it. Later, the woman moved into the apartment where the man's relative had lived, and they coincidentally got jobs at the same company. How many coincidences had to align? Fact 14. A traffic accident across generations. A story from insurance archives. In 1975, on the Bermuda Islands, a moped rider was killed after being struck by a taxi. A tragedy, seemingly an ordinary road accident. In reality, exactly 1 year later, in 1976, his brother died in exactly the same way. He was riding the same moped on the same street. He was struck by the same taxi, with the same driver behind the wheel. The same passenger was sitting in the car as 1 year earlier. Fact 15. Brothers born and who died in the same hospital. A modern story from medical archives. Two brothers were born in the same hospital, 3 years apart. They grew up, moved to different cities, and lived different lifestyles. But when the older brother turned 53, he was in a car crash and was taken to the same hospital where he had been born. Doctors fought for his life, but they could not save him. He died in intensive care. The younger brother, living in another state, knew nothing about the tragedy. Exactly 3 years later, on the same date, the younger brother was in a car accident in his own city. He was urgently airlifted by helicopter to the best hospital in the region, the very one where he was born and where his brother had died. Doctors tried to save him, but he died in the same intensive care unit, in the same bed on which his brother had died 3 years earlier. The very same nurse filled out the paperwork for both of them. Later, she said it was the most terrifying déjà vu of her career. Fact 16. The man killed by the number 8. The story of an Italian mathematician. A university professor was obsessed with the number 8. He was born on the 8th of August, 1888. 8, 8, 1, 8, 8. After a childhood accident, he had 8 fingers on his hands. He got married at the age of 28. That is 7 times 4. The sum of the digits is 10. 1 plus 0 equals 1. But if you focus on the digits 2 and 8, there is clearly an 8 there. In time, the professor began to believe that 8 was his lucky charm. He had 8 students. He lectured in classroom number 8. His office was on the 8th floor. He planned to live to 88, but at the age of 64, 8 times 8, he suddenly died of a heart attack. It happened on the 8th of December, 1952. Doctors pronounced him dead at 8 o'clock in the evening. 88 people attended the funeral. He was buried in plot number 8 of the cemetery. 8 followed him his entire life and killed him precisely when it became 8 times 8. Coincidence or a mystical connection? Fact 17. Lottery tickets and a family curse. The 1960s. Bulgaria. A man wins a large sum in the lottery with ticket number 0926 303 359. Joy, celebration, a new life. But a few years later, he tragically dies in a car crash. Then 10 years after that, his son, unaware of his father's win, buys a lottery ticket and hits the jackpot with the exact same numbers, 0926 303 359. The probability of that is virtually zero, yet the story repeated. A few years later, the son also died in a car crash. Relatives began calling those digits the cursed numbers. Mathematicians calculated that the chance of two relatives winning the lottery with tickets bearing identical numbers is roughly 1 in 300 billion, and that both would die in car crashes after winning is beyond statistics. Fact 18. The car that killed its owners. The 1930s. Europe. A luxurious car was bought by a wealthy businessman. A year later, the owner died in an accident, and the car was sold. The second owner lasted 8 months and also died in a road accident. The third lasted half a year. The fourth did not die in a crash. He was crushed by the same car while repairing it in his garage. The fifth owner deliberately replaced every part and repainted the car, but 3 months later he crashed and died. In total, 17 owners had this car over 12 years. 14 of them died. 3 managed to sell it, frightened by the series of tragedies. In the end, the authorities confiscated the car and sent it to a scrapyard. When they tried to crush it, the press broke. A worker was injured. Eventually, the car was dismantled by hand and melted down. Engineers found no technical defects, just a cursed car. Fact 19. The photograph that predicted a death. The year 1900. A family photograph. A well-to-do family in Germany ordered a portrait from a fashionable photographer. Everyone dressed in their best clothes and lined up in front of the camera. When the picture was developed, everyone gasped. On the photo, behind one family member, a young daughter, a clear silhouette of a coffin could be seen. There had been no coffin in the studio. The photographer swore it was a film defect. The family demanded a retake. In the second photo, the coffin-like silhouette was even clearer. A month later, the girl fell ill with pneumonia and died. The family kept the photograph as proof of an omen. Skeptics speak of a random defect. But how do you explain that the defect appeared twice, precisely behind the girl who soon died, and not behind anyone else? And now a story that will shock you more than all the previous ones. Fact 20. The man saved by being late. The 11th of September, 2001. New York. An employee of a financial company was supposed to be at his office in the World Trade Center by 8:30 in the morning, but his 3-year-old son threw a tantrum, refusing to go to daycare. The father was delayed by an hour. Because of that sluchania delay, he did not enter the building when the plane crashed into it. All his colleagues who were in the office died. He survived. What if his son, on a subconscious level, sensed danger and saved his father with that tantrum? There are dozens of similar stories of miraculous survivals on September 11th. One man spilled coffee on his shirt and went back home to change. Another woman missed her bus. Someone got stuck in an elevator in a neighboring building. All of them were supposed to die, but tiny coincidences saved them. Coincidence or the hand of fate? Fact 21. The monk who survived both atomic bombings. The 6th of August, 1945. Hiroshima. An atomic bomb is dropped on the city. Among the survivors was a Catholic monk who was in a monastery 3 kilometers from the epicenter. He suffered burns but lived. Then 3 days later, on the 9th of August, the monk decided to visit friends in the city of Nagasaki. He was there when the second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, and he survived again. That monk became one of the few people with documented proof of surviving both atomic bombings. What are the odds of being in the only 2 cities on Earth where nuclear weapons were used, 3 days apart, and surviving both times? Fact 22. The baby who fell onto the same person 3 times. Detroit, United States, 1930 to 1975. In 1930, a man named Joseph Feiglock was walking down the street. Suddenly, a baby fell from above, having slipped out of a window. Feiglock happened to be beneath that window at the exact moment. The baby landed pramo on him. Both suffered only minor bruises. Exactly 1 year later, in 1931, Feiglock was walking down the same street again, and again a baby fell from a window. Fact 23. The novel that described the author's murder. The 1930s. A British detective writer publishes a novel about a murder, describing an elaborate method of poisoning with a rare toxin. The book becomes a bestseller. 2 years later, the writer is found dead in his own home. The autopsy revealed that he was poisoned with the exact same toxin and in the exact same way described in his novel. The investigation established that the murderer had read the book and used the author's method to kill the author himself. The writer unknowingly wrote instructions for his own killer. Irony of fate in its most brutal form. Fact 24. The diary that predicted the war. The year 1910, Europe. A young man begins keeping a diary in which he describes his nightmares. He sees a massive war, trenches, gas attacks, and millions killed. The entries are detailed, describing weapons, battle locations, and even the years 1914 to 1918. In 1914, the First World War began. Everything the young man had described in his dreams 4 years earlier came true with terrifying accuracy. He saw a war that did not yet exist. He himself was killed in 1916 on the Somme, in one of the battles he had also described in his diary. His writings are preserved in the archive of a military museum as one of the most mysterious coincidences of the 20th century. Fact 25. The phone number from a novel. The 1970s. An American writer is working on a detective novel. In the book, the characters call a phone number the author invented at random, a completely fictional sequence of digits. The book is published. 1 week after the novel's release, the publisher began receiving complaints. It turned out that the fictional number belonged to a real married couple in California. Readers were calling them day and night, thinking it was part of some promotional campaign. The family was driven nearly insane by the calls. But that was not all. In the novel, the owner of that number was a murderer. The real owner of the number sued the publisher. The writer swore he had made up the number randomly without checking whether it existed. The probability of guessing an active number out of millions of combinations was negligible, but he guessed it. Fact 26. Two brothers killed by lightning in the same place. The year 1999, United Kingdom. A man is walking across a field during a thunderstorm. He is killed by a lightning strike, a tragedy, seemingly a random accident. But in 1918, 19 years earlier, his brother had crossed the same field. A storm broke out. Lightning struck the exact same spot and killed him as well. But the story continues. In 1936, 18 years later, the nephew of these brothers, the son of one of them, was also walking across that field. A storm began. Lightning struck the same spot for the third time and killed him. 3 generations of one family killed by lightning in the same place over 37 years. Local residents placed a cross there and call it the cursed spot. Fact 27. The man who won the lottery twice with the same numbers. The year 2008, United States. A man wins a small sum in the lottery. The ticket numbers are 7, 12, 2, 3, 8. He celebrates and spends the money. In 2011, 3 years later, he buys another lottery ticket. This time he chooses the numbers intuitively without looking at any old records. He wins a jackpot of several million. When he checked the numbers, they turned out to be 3, 7, 12, 2, 3, 8, exactly the same as 3 years earlier. He did not remember the old numbers. He simply chose at random and picked the same ones. Statisticians calculated that the probability of winning the lottery twice with the same randomly chosen numbers is roughly 1 in a trillion, but it happened. Fact 28. The actor who played his own death. The year 1993. Filming of the movie The Crow in the United States. Actor Brandon Lee, the son of the legendary Bruce Lee, is filming a scene in which his character is shot. A prop gun loaded with blank cartridges is used. Due to an error by the prop crew, a real bullet from a previous shoot remained lodged in the barrel. When his co-star fired the gun with blanks, the stuck bullet was propelled out like a real shot. The actor was mortally wounded. He died exactly as written in the script. Brandon Lee played his own death on camera. His final scene became real. Brandon's father, Bruce Lee, also died under strange circumstances during filming in 1973. Fact 27. Two generations of the Lee family who died during film productions. Fact 28. The man who met himself in the past. The year 2002, Sweden. A man is sorting through the archive of his late grandfather, a military photographer from the time of the Second World War. Among the photographs, he finds one taken in 1944 in Norway. In the foreground, there is a group of soldiers, and in the background, the face of a young man. To his horror, the grandson recognizes himself. The man in the photograph from 1944 is his exact double. The same facial features, the same gaze, even the same mole on his cheek. But this is impossible. The grandson was born in 1980. Experts examine the photograph. It is authentic. There are no signs of manipulation. Either it was an incredible look-alike who happened to be caught on camera 36 years before the grandson was born, or the family keeps this photograph as proof that we do not know everything about the nature of time. Fact 29. A note found after 50 years. The year 1954. A schoolboy in the United States writes a note with predictions about the future. He hides it inside a school wall during renovations, dreaming that someone will find it many years later. In the note he writes, "When you read this, I will be a teacher at the same school." In 2004, exactly 50 years later, the school is renovated again. Workers find the note, read the author's name, and discover that this person has indeed been working at the school as a teacher for 20 years. He wrote the prediction at the age of 11 without seriously dreaming of becoming a teacher, simply as a child's fantasy. But the universe decided otherwise. 50 years later, he found his own note, holding it with trembling hands, unable to believe his eyes. Fact 30. A surname that became destiny. A modern story. In a small town lived two boys with the same rare surname. They shared a last name, but were not related. This was checked along all family lines. One moved to another country, the other stayed. 20 years later, both independently opened businesses selling musical instruments. Both named their shops after their surname. Both married women who were pianists. Both had daughters born in the same year. Both daughters entered a conservatory in the same year. They learned about each other by accident when they ordered goods from the same supplier, who mixed up the orders. When they met, it turned out there were even more coincidences. Both quit smoking on the same day. Both underwent heart surgery in the same year. Both had the same first name. Even their patronymics matched. Two people with the same surname live parallel lives on different continents. There is no explanation. Fact 31. The airplane that crashed into a house that had been foreseen. The 1950s, United States. A woman regularly has the same nightmare. An airplane crashes into her house. She tells this to her psychotherapist, who records the dreams in his notes. The dreams repeat for months. In 1958, a small airplane crashes into a residential neighborhood due to engine failure. It crashes directly into the woman's house. She dies together with her husband. The psychotherapist provided his records to the investigators. The woman had described her death 2 years before the event with frightening detail. She even drew pictures from her dreams showing an airplane hitting a house in flames. Premonition or coincidence? And if it was a premonition, why was she unable to avoid it? Fact 32. 3 generations who died from the same disease on the same day. A story from European Medical Archives. The year 1889. A man dies of tuberculosis on the 15th of March. The year 1920. His son dies of the same disease on the 15th of March, exactly 31 years later. The year 1951. His grandson dies of tuberculosis on the 15th of March, another 31 years later. 3 generations of one family died on the same date, with an interval of exactly 31 years. The disease was the same, the day was the same, the interval was identical. Doctors found no explanation. Tuberculosis has no genetic predisposition tied to a specific date of death. It is simply impossible statistics. The family broke this line. The great-grandson is alive and healthy, but on the 15th of March, he never leaves his house. Fact 33. The watches that stopped at the moment of their owners' deaths. The final and most mystical story, a family heirloom. An old pocket watch passed from father to son since 1850. The family noticed a strange pattern. Each owner of the watch died exactly at the moment when the watch stopped. The first owner died in 1875. The watch stopped at 3:17. Time of death, 3:17. The second owner died in 1923. The watch stopped at 11:42. Time of death, 11:42. The third, the fourth, the fifth. The same story. The sixth owner, in 2005, deliberately broke the mechanism so that the watch would never run again. It now lies disassembled in a safe. He is still alive, the only one in the family who has lived beyond 70 years. But every night he dreams of the ticking of that watch. 7 generations, 7 deaths, matching the stopping of the watch down to the second. Experts examined the mechanism and found nothing unusual. An ordinary 19th century pocket watch. There can be no connection between a mechanism and its owner, yet there is. The watch lies dismantled, but the owner does not dare to throw it away. He fears it might trigger something even worse. Perhaps some objects really do absorb the fate of their owners. Now you know 33 incredible coincidences that cannot be explained by logic. Presidents who died according to the same scenario, 100 years apart. Twins who lived identical lives without ever meeting. Writers who predicted catastrophes decades before they happened. People who survived unimaginable chains of events that cannot be random. Which coincidence shocked you the most? Do you believe these are just accidents, or is there something greater behind them? Fate? Predestination? Invisible threads connecting events? Perhaps you yourself have experienced incredible coincidences in life. Write in the comments. I am very interested in your stories. If this video made you think about the nature of coincidence, like it and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you do not miss new episodes. Share this video with friends so they can also learn about these unbelievable stories. And in the next video, I will tell you about even more mysterious coincidences that change the course of history. And remember, sometimes reality is more astonishing than any fiction. See you in the next video.